Hey everyone, and welcome back to the channel. Today we're diving deep into a story tangled with espionage, secret wars, mountains of drugs, and not one, but two operations flying under the same notorious name, Air America. One Air America was a front for the CIA, operating in the shadows of the Vietnam War. Embroiled in the murky opium politics of Southeast Asia's Golden Triangle. The other, a brazen, high-flying cocaine smuggling empire run out of Scranton, Pennsylvania. How could two such different operations share a name? Was it a coincidence, or was one man deliberately trading on the dark mystique of the other? We're talking about Frederick Rick Luytjes, a man who lived a double life as a respected businessman and allegedly one of America's most successful cocaine kingpins. And we're talking about the original Air America, the CIA's deniable asset whose planes soared over jungles carrying everything from rice and refugees to allegedly raw opium. Stick around as we unravel the threads connecting the CIA's secret airline in Laos to a cocaine cowboy's audacious adventure decades later. It's a tale of two Air Americas. To understand the second Air America, we need to meet the original. Let's rewind to the Cold War, specifically Southeast Asia in the 1950s, 60s, and 70s. The story actually begins with the Civil Air Transport, or CAT, founded in China after World War II. Initially involved in relief missions, CAT quickly got drawn into supporting the Chinese nationalists against Mao Zedong's communists. When the nationalists fled to Taiwan, CAT needed new business. Enter the CIA. In 1950, the CIA covertly bought CAT, transforming it into its primary proprietary airline. By 1959, it was rebranded, taking on the name that would become legendary in espionage circles, Air America. Officially, Air America was just a private charter company doing business in Asia. Unofficially, it was the logistical backbone of the CIA's secret war in Laos. While the world focused on Vietnam, the U.S. was deeply involved next door, backing Royal Laotian forces and Hmong hill tribes against the North Vietnamese-supported Pathet Lao communists. Air America planes were the lifeline. They flew into remote, dangerous mountain airstrips where conventional planes couldn't go. They dropped rice to starving villagers, evacuated refugees, transported diplomats and spies, rescued downed American pilots, ferried commandos and sabotage teams, delivered weapons and moved troops. Primarily the CIA-backed Hmong army led by General Vang Pao Long Tien. Vang Pao's secret headquarters in the mountains of Laos, hidden from any official map, became one of the busiest airports in the world, thanks to Air America traffic. But Laos had another major product central to its highland economy, particularly for the Hmong: opium. This region, parts of Laos, Thailand, and Burma, form the infamous Golden Triangle, the world's largest source of illicit opium and heroin at that time. For generations, the Hmong had cultivated opium poppies as their primary cash crop. Traditionally, they transported it overland or via the Royal Laotian Air Force. But the escalating war changed everything. When the Pathet Lao captured key areas like the Plain of Jars around 1964, traditional transport routes were cut off. The Laotian Air Force couldn't reach the remote mountain growing regions. The Hmong faced economic ruin. Who could reach those areas? Air America, with its specialized short takeoff and landing planes and helicopters. And here lies the most controversial chapter of Air America's story, starting in 1972 with historian Alfred W. McCoy's explosive book, The Politics of Heroin in Southeast Asia. Allegations surfaced that Air America planes became the transport network for Vang Pao's opium. McCoy, relying on interviews with officials and insiders, claimed Air America aircraft flew raw opium from remote Hmong villages to Vang Pao's headquarters at Long Tien. There it was sometimes refined into heroin in labs allegedly operating with CIA knowledge, if not direct involvement. Some of this heroin tragically found its way to South Vietnam, fueling addiction among American GIs. By 1971, estimates suggested 10 to 15% of lower-ranking U.S. soldiers in Vietnam were using heroin, much of it originating from the Golden Triangle. The accusation wasn't necessarily that CIA officers were personally stuffing bags with opium. McCoy and others argue it was a case of complicity and strategic priorities. The CIA's main goal was stopping communism. Vang Pao and his Hmong army were crucial allies. Opium funded their war effort. Therefore, the CIA, through Air America, allegedly looked the other way, or tactically allowed the transport other drugs that kept their allies armed and fighting. It was the deal with the devil, justified by the Cold War imperative. Former CIA paramilitary operatives like Tony Poe and some former Air America pilots later supported these claims, admitting they saw opium being loaded onto company planes. Neil Hansen, a former Air America pilot, later convicted for cocaine smuggling himself, stated in a PBS interview, "Yeah, I've seen the sticky bricks of opium come on board, and no one was challenging their right to carry it. Primarily, it was transported on our smaller aircraft. They would send their opium to market." The CIA denied these allegations then, and largely still does. Officials like William Colby, who later became CIA director, pushed back hard against McCoy's book. Aviation historian William M. Leary, citing others who worked in Laos, wrote that American-owned airlines never knowingly transported opium. The official line remains one of plausible deniability. Perhaps rogue pilots, perhaps local military, using the planes without official sanction. But the evidence compiled by McCoy and others paints a damning picture of, at minimum, willful ignorance and direct complicity in exchange for geopolitical advantage. Air America became synonymous not just with covert ops, but with the dark underbelly of the drug trade fueling a secret war. The fall of Saigon in 1975 marked the end of the road for the original Air America. After participating in the chaotic final evacuation, Operation Frequent Wind, the airline's assets were sold off and the company dissolved in 1976. And its pilots, many of whom had risked everything in dangerous, unacknowledged missions, were largely forgotten, left without pensions or official recognition. The ghost airline vanished. But the name Air America wouldn't stay dormant for long. Fast forward a few years to the late 1970s and early 1980s. The drug of choice flooding American streets isn't Southeast Asian heroin anymore. It's cocaine, flowing north from Colombia, and a new entirely unrelated operation is about to borrow a very famous, very notorious name. Enter Frederick Luytjes, known as Rick. Born on Long Island, Luytjes was fascinated by flying from a young age. He got his licenses and eventually set up shop in Scranton, Pennsylvania, running an aircraft company that specialized in outfitting planes, particularly for long-range flight. By the early 1980s, Rick Luytjes had cultivated two very different reputations. Publicly, he was seen as an upstanding businessman, a pillar of the Scranton community. He raised money for Republican politicians, rubbed shoulders with Pennsylvania's elite, like former Governor William Scranton, and even had his picture taken with President Gerald Ford. But behind the respectable facade Luytjes was allegedly building a massive criminal enterprise. He founded his own freight company specializing in high risk, high reward cargo, and he chose a name seemingly designed to evoke intrigue and perhaps offer a veneer of untouchability: Air America. Investigators later suspected Luytjes deliberately picked a name to create the impression he was connected to the CIA, leveraging the mystique of the original clandestine airline. Whether this was for intimidating rivals, impressing Colombian suppliers, or simply a display of audacious ego, we don't know for sure, but Luytjes reportedly did tell his South American partners he was working as a CIA informant, perhaps believing it gave them cover. This Air America wasn't flying opium over Laos. It was flying cocaine from jungle airstrips in Colombia to secret landing sites across the United States, Florida, Georgia, New York, and even back home in Pennsylvania. And Luytjes' operation was sophisticated. Berkeley Rice, in his book Trafficking, The Boom and Bust of the Air America Cocaine Ring, details the operation. Luytjes and his pilots, often described as well-educated and from upper middle-class backgrounds, flew specially modified planes. They pioneered routes and techniques to evade radar and law enforcement. Stripped-down planes would allegedly leave the Wilkes-Barre Scranton airport carrying duffel bags stuffed with cash, maybe $1 million per trip heading south. They'd return loaded with cocaine, sometimes as much as 1,300 pounds per flight. These weren't battle-hardened spies from the jungles of Laos. Rice describes them as driven by greed and a sense of adventure, viewing themselves almost as romantic outlaws rather than drug traffickers, contributing to a devastating epidemic. Luytjes reportedly boasted his pilots could guarantee arrival times within 3 minutes. Nobody else can do that, he allegedly claimed, not even Federal Express. Over roughly 4 years, from about 1980 to 1984, Luytjes' Air America is estimated to have flown over $2 billion worth of cocaine into the U.S., netting the ring perhaps $40 million. Luytjes himself amassed considerable wealth, laundering money through legitimate businesses and acquiring significant property, including a massive 2,700-acre estate in the Poconos. Luytjes' skill in aircraft acquisition and modification was renowned in underworld circles. In a strange twist linking back peripherally to the world of covert ops, Luytjes actually sold the C-123 cargo plane that was later shot down over Nicaragua in 1986 carrying weapons, an incident that helped expose the Iran-Contra affair. And convicted drug pilot Gary Betzner testified in a Senate investigation that he encountered the infamous CIA-linked smuggler Barry Seal at an Air America facility in Pennsylvania, presumably Luytjes's. But the high life built on cocaine couldn't last forever. The DEA was closing in. They cultivated informants within Luytjes' circle. In 1984, one of his pilots, Peter Cooper, flipped and became a DEA informant, providing the inside information needed to dismantle the ring. Luytjes was arrested. Even then, he reportedly claimed he was on a high government mission and not really a smuggler, attempting to leverage the very ambiguity his company's name perhaps helped create. He maintained he had acted as an informant for both the DEA and CIA, and even called agents as defense witnesses to testify about assistance he had provided on other matters. He also tried to turn informant himself after getting caught, but apparently continued smuggling, sealing his fate. He eventually pleaded guilty, admitting to smuggling 7.5 tons of cocaine. His massive Poconos estate was seized by the government in what was then a record property forfeiture. It's now public state game lands. Luytjes went to prison. Some of his associates, like Joseph P. Donahue, who helped Luytjes launder money, faced their own trials and convictions years later. Luytjes' Air America, the cocaine version, crashed and burned. a short-lived but incredibly lucrative criminal enterprise built on audacity, aviation skill, and a borrowed name laden with history. So what have we got? Two Air Americas, separated by time, geography, and cargo, yet linked by a name and the shadowy worlds that they operated in. The first Air America, the CIA's airline, remains a symbol of America's secret wars, covert action, and the ethically compromised choices made during the Cold War. Its alleged involvement in the Golden Triangle opium trade, meticulously documented by Alfred McCoy despite CIA objections, raises enduring questions about government complicity in the very drug trade it publicly fights. Did the ends fighting communism justify the means, facilitating the opium flow that funded allies and fueled addiction? The debate continues, and the full truth may never be fully declassified. The second Air America, Rick Luytjes' cocaine ring, is a story of the booming drug trade of the 1980s, fueled by greed and a warped sense of adventure. Luytjes wasn't a CIA operative. He was a criminal entrepreneur who expertly exploited aviation logistics for massive profit. His choice of name seems a calculated move to muddy the waters, perhaps gain some perceived immunity, or simply reflect his own grandiosity. His claims of being a government informant were likely a mix of self-preservation and attempts to manipulate the system he ultimately fell victim to. While there's no direct evidence of a direct operational link between the CIA's airline and Luytjes' smuggling ring, the shared name creates a fascinating echo. It highlights how the legacy of covert operations and the associated mystique can be appropriated, intentionally or not, decades later. Both stories force us to confront uncomfortable truths about the hidden pathways of power, money, and illicit goods that operate beneath the surface of official narratives. Once Air America fought secret wars with alleged drug money in Southeast Asia, the other ran a cocaine empire from Pennsylvania under the same banner. Two distinct operations, one shared infamous name, leaving behind a tangled legacy of intrigue and unanswered questions. What do you think? Was the CIA directly involved in the heroin trade through the original Air America? Did Rick Luytjes really think naming his company Air America would protect him? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments. If you found this dive into the murky world of Air America interesting, please hit that like button, subscribe if you haven't already, and ring that notification bell so you don't miss our next exploration into hidden histories. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.